Okay, nice to see you all again. My trip was very, very nice. Just for the record, because there's a lot of people now that were there that are now on here watching. You guys, I appreciate everything you guys did over there. Thank you. Okay, so moving right along, we're going to finish up the second step today, and put on this. I put this on the board. It says I believe in the sun, even when it is not shining. I believe in love even when I cannot feel it. And I believe in God even when he is silent. Isn't that a lovely saying? You know where this came from? Which makes it much more lovely. This was carved on the wall in a concentration camp in Auschwitz. Can you imagine somebody going through what they went through there and putting that on the wall? It's amazing. Uh, that's truly amazing. That is what you call. Is it week 11? Okay. I wasn't sure because I erased it before I looked. Yeah. All right. So week 11. Okay. I'm not going to open that. Week 11. I erased it and wrote that on there. And by the time I wrote that, I forgot what I erased. All right. So what we've been doing in the second step is kind of introducing you to God. I mean, we read the God memorandum, and one of the things that we stressed is that the difference between step two and hope is believing, it's not faith. We talked about that a few times already. And what I want to do is I want to explain that a little bit. Faith is knowledge that comes as a result of a complete process. Okay. And this is why the 12th step is the conclusion, having had a spiritual awakening, right? So we should not expect this result in step two.
Thinking about faith is a constant believing it is not faith.
Faith is knowledge that comes from as a result of a complete process. And you get experience from that. And faith is experience. Believing is hope. And faith is experience. So as you start doing this program and doing this stuff, you start getting experiences, which turns out to give you faith. But you can't expect that process to happen in the second step. It doesn't happen like that. Many people actually fail because they're expecting true knowledge, not true knowledge by faith. And if you remember the root origin of the word agnostic, remember, is lack knowledge. So if we lack knowledge, we can't have the knowledge that we need to make the conclusion true for us. So before they've come to believe, before they made a decision, before they've gotten an experience, they're looking for the result, and it doesn't happen like that. Okay, they have no results yet, no experience yet, no decisions yet, so you can't expect that to be faith. So what we're going to do is, I think we were on page, if I'm not mistaken, 53.
Yeah.
So I just spent 3 days going over my book, and I moved my bookmark a few times, but okay. And the bottom of the page, or let's go to the second paragraph. I don't know if we did this yet, but when we became alcoholics, crushed by, we did?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so let's look at the bottom of 53. That was natural, but let us think a little more closely without knowing it. Had we not been brought to where we stood by a certain kind of faith, or did not we not believe in our own reasoning? Did we not have confidence in our ability to think? What was that but a sort of faith? Yes, we had been faithful, objectively faithful to the God of reason. So, in one way or another, we discovered that faith had been involved all the time. We found too that we had been worshippers. What a state of mental gooseflesh that used to bring on. Had we not variously worshipped people, sentiment, things, money, and ourselves? And then, with a better motive, had we not worshipfully beheld the sunset, the sea, or a flower? So you've all read that before, right? I got a question for you. What is the better motive?
Wow,
What'd you say?
the flower,
The flower,
worshiping.
worshiping nature? Okay, well, so let me read this again. We found too that we had been worshippers. What a state of mental gooseflesh that used to bring on. Had we not variously worshipped people, sentiment, things, money, and ourselves, and then with a better motive, had we not worshipfully beheld the sunset, the sea, or a flower? So what is the better motive? Spirituality, okay. People, okay. So let me ask you a question then. Has anybody in here, and I'm sure most of you have, anybody in here ever created anything, made something? Doug, you're saying, yeah, what have you made?
2 kids and a lot of messes.
Okay, I was speaking more like kind of like, coffee table. Okay, you made a coffee table. All right, so you made a coffee table. When you were done with it, what did you do? What do you mean by that? Worshipped it. You looked at it. You looked at it, and you were kind of in awe, right? Okay.
Very comfortable with the-
Okay. Right. Exactly. So the same thing applies here. That because me, for example, I'm not the type of guy that worships a flower or the sea or a sunset. I don't, I'm not a wishy-washy kind of guy like that. Okay. But, but, no, in all fairness though, but there have been many moments where I've seen a sunset, the sea, or flowers or something, and I went, wow, isn't that beautiful? Which really is worshiping, right? When you can look at something and admire its beauty, that's worshiping, right? And I've come to understand this paragraph as being that because the God in me, when I have a clear channel and I'm open, that the God in me looks at his creation, the sunset, the sea, a flower, and appreciates his creation through us. Because God, not only do we need God, God needs us. And God needs us so he can experience all of his creations and interact with his creation, us. And so when the point in my life comes and I look at the sunset and I go, wow, wasn't that beautiful? That's God in me looking at his own creation. And I believe that that is the better motive. What it says here. Of course, he's saying, had we not variously worshiped people, sentiment, things, money, and ourselves, and then with a better motive, had we not worshipfully beheld the sunset, the sea, or a flower? So the better motive is the God in me is liking his creation, right? We're going to finish on this page, but just for a minute, go to page 55. And the second paragraph says, actually, we were fooling ourselves. Deep down in every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God. It may be obscured by calamity, by pomp, by worship of other things, but in some form or other, it's there. So here he's saying the same thing that he's saying on page 54, that we worship people and money and sentiment and things. And over here he's saying that our thoughts and our visions are obscured by calamity, pomp, worship of other things. He's kind of repeating himself here, right? So let's go back to 54. And he says, who of us had not loved something or somebody? How much did these feelings, these loves, these worships have to do with pure reason? Little or nothing, we saw at last. Were not these things the tissue out of which our lives were constructed? Did not these feelings, after all, determine the course of our existence? It was impossible to say we had no capacity for faith or love or worship. In one form or another, had been living by faith and little else. So faith can be had, but it needs to develop. So even though we're talking about faith in this chapter, we're not saying that step 2 is about faith. Yes, faith can definitely be developed. And he's just giving us an example. So look on the bottom of the page. It says, hence, when we saw that reason isn't everything, neither is reason, as most of us use it, entirely dependable, though it emanate from our best minds. What about people who prove that man could never fly? So now go back to the paragraph on 55, the second paragraph. Actually, we're fooling ourselves. And we read this, it may be obscured by calamity, by pomp, by worship of other things, but in some form or other it is there. For faith and a power greater than ourselves, and miraculous demonstrations of that power in human lives are facts as old as man himself. So miraculous demonstrations. This room right here, right now, is full of miracles. You people are miracles. I don't know. I'm a miracle. I know that. I am certainly a miracle. And I would have to say that you are too. And that God has not stopped creating miracles. And the miraculous demonstrations that are as old as man himself have been happening since the beginning of time. Miraculous demonstrations, not coincidence. We finally saw that faith in some kind of God was a part of our makeup, just as much as the feeling we have for a friend. Well, let's look at that first sentence. We finally saw that faith in some kind of God was part of our makeup. You ever can you ever remember a time in your life when you were in a world of shit? And I mean, everything was happening fast on you and you're in deep trouble. And you probably immediately, silently said, God help me. Right? So that
Well,
doesn't,
don't go to church.
no, we're talking about something happening right here, right now. And like somebody in a foxhole and the bombs are dropping, right? The bombs are dropping all around them. Everybody in that foxhole is praying to God or ask God to help them, right? Because it's a natural reflection. Like if I put my hand in front of your face, you blink your eyes, right? And so do you call out to God when you're in a world of shit and something happens. It's instinctive, okay? And that's what he's saying here. We finally saw that faith in some kind of God was part of our makeup. It wasn't something we had to think about. It wasn't something that had to be created or made up. It's part of our makeup. When we're in a world of shit, we call out to God. Just as much as the feelings we have for a friend. Sometimes we had to search fearlessly. That's the fourth step. But he was there. He was as much a fact as we were. That's an important sentence. He was as much a fact as we were. So I look here. I see Lisa sitting there. That's a fact. Okay. I see Michelle sitting there. And Levi sitting there. Ricky sitting here. These are facts. The book is saying that just as much as a fact as you guys are here, so is God. If you guys are here and you're here, it's a fact that you're here. So is God. There's no denying that. He was as much a fact as we were. The fact that we're here, it's a fact God's here. We found the great reality deep down within us. In the last analysis, only there that he may be found. It was so with us. So, and he talks about the guy that's the minister's son, that was an atheist, and the guy in the hospital, and we're on page 56. And then This is one night when confined in a hospital, he was approached by an alcoholic who had had a spiritual experience. Our friend George rose as he bitterly cried out, "If there is a God, he certainly hasn't done anything for me." But later, alone in his room, he asked himself this question: is it possible that all the religious people I have known are wrong? While pondering the answer, he felt as though he lived in hell. Then, like a thunderbolt, a great thought came. It crowded out all else. Who are you to say there is no God? That's what this man said to himself. This man recounts as he tumbled out of his bed to his knees. In a few seconds, he was overwhelmed by the conviction of the presence of God. It poured over and through him with the certainty and the majesty of a great tide at flood. The barriers he had built through the years were swept away. He stood in the presence of infinite power and love. He had stepped from bridge to shore. For the first time, he lived in a conscious companionship with his Creator. So, all right. Let's go to page 57, the last sentence in page 57. Or the next to last paragraph says, even so has God restored to us, all of us, to our right minds. To this man, the revelation was sudden. Some of us grow into it more slowly. But he comes to all who have honestly sought him. When we drew near to him, he disclosed himself to us. So, all right. So now I want to teach you how we do a second step. Okay. This way, this is kind of like the exercise we did in step one. It really works. I've never seen anybody or heard anybody tell me in all these years that didn't work for them. I don't know if you've tried it yet yourself, but hopefully you have and you've seen how it helps you. So here now, we're going to try to get, and try to come to believe that a power greater than ourselves can restore us to sanity. Okay. So the first thing we want to do here, I told you before in step two, is we want to start our relationship with God. That's what our book tells us. And we want to become comfortable with that God. Because if you're not comfortable with God, it's impossible to do the third step. You cannot do the third step if you are not comfortable with God. It's impossible. Okay. So I suggest for people to take a piece of paper and write down everything they think and believe about God. Whatever it is, no matter how silly, no matter what. Write down everything you think and believe about God. And then it's kind of a 3-step process. Okay. After you have written down everything you think and believe about God, and I think you should start off with, and I'm not asking you to define God. I'm asking you to define your belief in God. In other words, it's helpful to start off with a name. Okay, what do you call your God? We don't need to get religious, but me, I call my God Jesus. And so I don't have to reinvent the wheel. You know, I didn't come here to find God. My dad was God in my life. When I was 10, he died. And I spent from that 10 years old to when I crawled into these rooms trying to be God myself to take my dad's place. Okay. So I didn't come in here to find God. But I realized that we have to have a relationship with God. So I start where the book tells us to begin with whatever knowledge we have, whatever little, no matter how awkward it might be. So I use what I grew up. I don't have to recreate the wheel here. So you use whatever, but it helps to have a name and not a picture, but a vision of what God is. That helps also. But to write down everything on a piece of paper that you think and believe about God, very helpful. After you do that, you're going to sit down with your sponsor and you're going to go over that list. And I need you to remove any negative thing that's on that list, because a lot of us come here with negative thoughts of God. You know, he's going to punish me. He's going to condemn me. He's going to, that. Anything negative on your list, remove. But what we're going to do is we're taking your original list, we're going to press change and rearrange it, and you're going to wind up with a new list. And how we press change and rearrange it is we're removing everything negative off of that list. Now you want to put some positive stuff in there that maybe you don't believe your God is, but you would like to have a God that believes that. For instance, for me, I didn't believe God had a sense of humor. I really didn't. And I had a guy that, I tell you, my sponsor and I were in prison together, right? So he knew me well. And he said, "Don't you have daughters?" And I said, "Yeah." At the time, I had 2 daughters. Now I have 3 daughters and 4 granddaughters, right? There's no doubt in my mind's got a sense of humor. Give me 7 girls in my life, right? So, but my guy says to me, "Don't you have a couple of daughters?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "I think God's got a hell of a sense of humor and gave you 2 daughters." So because I said I'd like my God to have a sense of humor, but I don't believe he does. So he said, it doesn't matter if you believe he does. If there's something you like your God to be, but you don't believe he is, put it on the new list. So after we press change and rearrange the list, we remove all the negative things, and then we add some positive things that we'd like our God to be. Now we have a list that is not something we really believe, but it's a good positive list of God. And now I want to teach you the old fake it till you make it prayer. That's what we call it, the fake it till you make it prayer. Every morning, when you get up, you should take your list and out loud, you should read, "God, even though I don't believe you are," and read everything on your list out loud. And you say, "Today I'm going to act as if you are." Okay? I'm going to make you this promise. I'm going to make you this guarantee. If you do that every day, there's going to come a day. I don't know when it's going to be. Maybe it's a week, maybe it's a month, maybe it's 10 years. I don't know when it's going to be. But there's going to come a day where you're reading this list and you're doing the fake it till you make it prayer, and you're going to say to yourself, "Wait a minute, I do believe that." And you would have come to believe in the power greater than yourself that you're comfortable with. Now, I'm not saying you have to wait until you do believe that to start on the 3rd step. But if you diligently do this, you can get there quickly. Because just look at your life. Just look at all the blessings in your life. Remember the reading, the God memorandum, and all the blessings that was really bestowed on us, right? We took so lightly. Do you have a question?
Yeah.
Mhm.
What if I already believe he can do all the things? Do I need? I mean,
Right.
No.
do
That's
I?
a good question. If you
like-
already believe it, no, you don't need to do it.
Okay.
But
It's good to have-
make your list. Make your list. Take off anything negative, add anything positive.
No,
And if you,
no positive right here.
all right, anything positive that you don't believe in God that you'd like to add to that? If not, then you have a good list, and that's fine. But this is an exercise that's not just for you; it's for the people you work with. So, because again, everything we do is to pass it on to someone else. So, you've been sober long enough where you should be at that place.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
So if someone doesn't believe it, you should tell them, get up and read the list, the second list that you to God. And the fake it till you make it, is that just reading this list?
fake it till you make it is you're saying, "God, even though I don't believe you are," and you read all these things, "today I'm going to act as if you are." And that's faking it. And you're going to keep faking it. And some people get insulted. "I'm going to fake it." Like you never fake shit before in your life. I never met an alcoholic or an addict that ain't full of shit in lots of ways, right? So don't tell me about faking it. You shouldn't have any problem about faking anything, okay? You fake it, you fake it, you fake it until you make it. It's called the fake it till you make it prayer.
Will you say the prayer one more time?
Yes, God, even though I do not believe you are, and you read the list out loud, today I'm going to act as if you are. And I promise you, one day you're going to read that list. Now, sometimes you have to read that list 2 or 3 times in the course of one day. Because you can always stop your day and start over again. There's a friend of mine in California. He's got the easiest prayer for God that I've ever heard anybody in my entire sobriety. He tells his sponsees that to start your day, just look up and say, whatever. And then anytime you need to stop your day, just look up and go, enough. And then if it's 2 o'clock and you're having a really bad day, you can just look up and go, enough. Take a deep breath and then whatever. And you just started your day off again. I've never seen anything easier than that. Right? So you can restart your day. But with this, I suggest if you restart your day, you restart your fake it till you make it prayer. And if you do this, you're going to get in touch with a God that you're very comfortable with. And that is the key to the third step. Now, before we get into step 3, we're on chapter 5, page 58. And I want to read this chapter because we read it all the time in meetings. You hear it in meetings a lot. You hear it, we read it all the time. And I think that we've read this and heard this so many times that most of us just don't pay attention to what it's really saying. We kind of, while you're reading how it works in the meeting, I'm thinking about what I have to do after the meeting's over, where I got to go and I don't spend much time mentally thinking about it. So let's look at chapter 5, how it works. It doesn't say how it happens or how it may be. If you want to know how it works, guess what? There's a whole chapter that says how it works. Okay? It says, rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. That means that Alcoholics Anonymous works 100%. Now, some people are under the impression that this is not the original manuscript, and it's not what it says. I have the original manuscript in my book. And here's what it said originally. Rarely have we seen the person fail who has thoroughly followed our directions. So it's important. Now, that's not in the first printing. That was in the original manuscript. They had a big argument about that, and they changed the directions to path. But the intent that Bill Wilson had when he wrote this was for you to understand that these steps are a set of directions. It's very important to know that. So he says, rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. Now, the next sentence is going to tell you who's not going to recover and why. It says, those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program. So this is not a matter of choice, and it's not a matter of what you want or what's written. Everything you're used to, everything you like. Because listen, everything you're used to and everything you like is what got you that seat right there. Right? So this is about those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program. Usually men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. So this really has nothing to do with drinking or not drinking or using or not using. Okay? This is about being able to be honest with yourself. Now, in this paragraph, they use the word honesty a couple times. And I want to tell you now before we read on that we're not talking about cash register honesty. And what we're not talking about is we're not talking about not lying. Bill Wilson will never, ever in this book set you up to fail. And he's not talking about lying or not lying because we are the best liars in the world, people like us. Okay? I always say all my defects are gone except for one. I still lie. Which means I have lots of defects. But so this is not about lying or not lying. It's not about cash register honesty. The honesty here is about just what it said, actually. They seem to be born. They're naturally incapable of grasping and developing a manner of living. This is about a manner of living. Now, I want to tell you, you might want to write this down. This is the first time in the book, and there's one other time later that we come to this. I have a little kind of wordplay that a little, what's the right word? No, a little math problem, let's say. Okay. And the math problem is this: knowledge plus practice equals learning. Learning changes character. Character changes the way we live. I'll say it again, yes. Knowledge plus the plus sign, knowledge plus practice equals learning. Learning changes character. Character changes the way we live. I'll do it again. Knowledge plus practice equals learning. Learning changes character. Character changes the way we live. You mean a fourth time? Knowledge plus practice. Knowledge plus practice. Make it like a math problem. Knowledge plus practice equals learning. Learning changes character. Character changes the way we live. Now, the reason I say make it like a math problem is because unlike anything else or most other things in life, when like I shared with you, I had one of my brothers was book smart. He was a genius. He didn't have any common sense, but he was book smart. But if you gave him something to study, he would take the test. He'd get 100. Always, he was that good. But over here is the only way we learn here is to practice the knowledge that we get. Okay, and so here in how it works, it says grasping and developing. That is knowledge plus practice. Grasping is knowledge, and developing is practicing that knowledge. Right? Okay, let me see here. Later in step 10, we come across the same equation on a whole different level. Page 84, second paragraph. This thought brings us to step 10, which suggests we continue to take personal inventory and continue to set right any new mistakes as we go along. We vigorously commence this way of living as we cleaned up the past. We have entered the world of the spirit. Our next function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. There you go again. Understanding is knowledge, effectiveness is practice. But on a whole different level now. So there's twice in this book that little equation comes into play. But we're back on page 58 where it says grasping and developing. That's now, 84. Second paragraph, step 10 is to grow in effectiveness and what does it say?
Understand.
Understanding and effectiveness.
And so it's knowledge. and
Understanding is knowledge, and effectiveness is practice. Yes, thank you. And we'll go over that again when we get to that point in that. So here we're back on 58, and so now he says they're naturally incapable of grasping and developing a manner of living, right? So it's not a manner of drinking or not drinking. It's about a manner of living, which demands rigorous honesty. We're not talking about sobriety. We're talking about honesty. We're talking about rigorous honesty. And the honesty that we're talking about is what happens to me when I take a drink. That's the honesty that you have to get in touch with here. At this point in the program of recovery, you need to get in touch with what happens to me when I take a drink or a drug. Play the tape all the way through. There's not concepts. It's not understanding or remembering something. The con stops here. The bullshit stops here. The justifying stops here. The rationalization stops here. Okay. There's only one kind of person who can't get sober, and that's the person that can't get constitutionally capable of being honest with themselves. Okay. Their chances are less than average. There are those two who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders. Wow. So you could be you could be bipolar, you could be paranoid schizophrenic, you could be outright mental defect. But you can get sober too, if you can be honest with yourself about what happens when you drink and drugs. So he says there are those two who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorder, but many of them do recover if they have the capacity to be honest. So you can be crazy, but if you can be honest with yourself, what happens when you drink, you can get sober. So now he says, our stories disclose in a general way what we used to be like, what happened, and what we are like now. Right? So that's in a general way we share like what it was like, what happened, and what it's like today, right? If you have decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you're ready to take certain steps. And that's actually the action of working the steps. Okay. So if you want what we have, that's only a little part of it. Because I know hundreds of people that want what we have, just not willing to stop drinking. So if you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, okay, then you're ready to take certain steps. It's good to be in that position when you get here of hopeless desperation. Hopeless desperation is a good, when you got no fight left in you. And then if you're at that spot, then you're ready to take certain steps. He says that some of these we balked. Of course we balked because we want to do shit our way. Right? Some of these we balked. We thought we could find an easier, softer way. I don't know about you, but I almost died trying to find an easier, softer way. But we could not. With all the earnestness at our command, we beg of you to be fearless and thorough from the very start. Again, this was written in the 1930s. If it was written today, it would say, listen, about as honest as we can get, you better get busy right fucking now. Some of us have tried to hold on to our old ideas. Again, that's, and the result was nil until we let go absolutely. So we have to surrender unconditionally. Okay. Remember that we deal with alcohol, cunning, baffling, and powerful. And of course, without help is too much for us. But there is one who has all power. That one is God. May you find him now. So here it's telling us and warning us that you got to get in touch with God now. If you notice that it's telling you this before step 3 begins. Half measures availed us nothing. We talked about this before, I think, right? I think I said to you, you can't, there's no such thing as half pregnant, right? And there's no such thing as half sober. You're either sober or you're not. You're either pregnant or you're not. There's no halfway, right? So half measures availed us nothing. So if you're doing this half step bullshit, you're not sober. You're not getting anything here. What you're getting is nothing. We stood at the turning point. What is the turning point?
Something.
The turning point is that hopeless desperation we just talked about. And what am I going to do? And you get sober and not do what I got to do to save my life or continue on. And the book talks about that. Okay, so we stood at the turning point. We asked his protection and care with complete abandon. That doesn't mean like a half-assed prayer or God, if you're real, if you're up there, you think you can help me out, no.
Thank God.
Exactly. God is everything or he's nothing. Complete abandon. You know, that other bullshit I was just talking about is not complete abandon. And here are the steps we took, which are suggested as a program of recovery. And I think we went over this, didn't we? Okay. That the suggestion here, I'm kind of confused, people. I'm sorry, because I just did all of this in 3 days over there, and I'm not sure what I did here with you. So yeah. So the mistake here is people think that the steps are a set of direct suggestions. They are not. We're not talking about the steps as suggestions. The suggestion here is a program of recovery. That's what the suggestion is. Here are the steps we took. That means that we completed them with action. That's how you took something. Now you take something, you complete them with action, which are suggested as a program of recovery. So the suggestion is the program of recovery. So if you want a program of recovery, then guess what? Here's a set of directions that you need to take. It's not the other way around. It's not, here's a suggestion to do these steps, and you might go, no. The suggestion is, you want to get well or not? You want a program of recovery or not? If you do, here's the directions. And that would be the steps. Okay, then we go through the 12 steps. And on page 60, it says, many of us exclaim, what an order. Of course we explain that, because it's not the way we want to do it again. Right? We want to do it our way. What an order. I can't go through with it. Do not be discouraged. No one among us has been able to maintain anything like perfect adherence to these principles. We are not saints. The point is, we're willing to grow along spiritual lines. Now, I've seen so many people over the years use this as a scapegoat for bad behavior. This is not a scapegoat for your bad behavior. Okay? This is, that people will do some outrageous dope fiend or drunken shit, and they'll go, oh, we're not saints. I'm willing to grow along spiritually. No. Don't use this book as a scapegoat for your bullshit. This book is too powerful, and I don't want no part of your bullshit like that. Okay? So no one among us has been able to maintain anything like perfect adherence to these principles. We're not saints. The point is, we're willing to grow along spiritual lines. The principles we have set down are guides to progress. And don't forget, the principles are the steps. Okay? We claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. Our description of the alcoholic. Now, this is important. Our description of the alcoholic is where? Not just the doctor's opinion. Our description of the alcoholic is the doctor's opinion, Bill's story, there is a solution, and more about alcoholism. Okay? The chapter to the agnostic, of course, is We Agnostics, and also part of chapter 2. Our personal adventures before and after make clear 3 pertinent ideas. Now, I was in Florida, and there was a guy with 35 years, and this was maybe 8 or 10 years ago. He had 30-something years sober. And we were reading this in a meeting. He said, I finally understand what this is saying. And he went on and talked for 5 minutes, some crazy shit about what this means is that it's talking about how he was before he got sober and after he got sober. And I said to him, I won't use his name, but I said to him, I didn't know you were alive and you were drunk when they wrote this. He said, well, I wasn't. I said, well, then how could that be that they're talking about? If they're talking about you like that. What they're talking about here is what's in the book. It says, the chapter to the our personal adventures before and after. Before this page, right here on page 60, there's some personal adventures. Bill's story, Fred's story, Jim, the guy who owned there's 3 or 4 different personal stories. So that's before this. And after this, in the back of the book is all the stories in the back of the book. So when it says the chapter to the, and our personal adventures before and after to make clear 3 pertinent ideas. They're talking about the stories before this page and the stories after this page. Not talking about the guy in Florida's life before he got sober. And they're not talking about your life either.
Isn't, isn't that some of their experience that God put in Wood that he did for them? After experiences, after becoming children,
Well,
didn't have to.
that's kind of what you're asking is kind of the same thing the third step talks about. Where's the steps here? So, made a decision to turn our will and lives over to the care of God as we understood him. Oh no, I'm sorry. The second step came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And everybody always says, why don't you say could? Why don't you say would? And the answer to that is the same as the answer to you. It all depends on the amount of your participation in your own recovery. So, yes, God could, certainly could. Will he do for me what I can do for myself? No.
Personal adventures before.
Oh, he's talking about, I see what you're saying. Okay, I'm sorry. So he said, right now he's talking about this little paragraph. He's talking about our description of the alcoholic. That's in those chapters we talked about. Then the chapter to the agnostic, we agnostic, and our personal adventures before and after. Before and after what? Before and after this page. Yeah.
To some degree, experience of getting sober, which they are when they're writing this book, they have experience getting sober, has shown them that God did show up for them and did these things that they came to believe in step 2.
Yeah, but there's it happened different ways for different people. And so what he's saying here, all he's saying here is that the stories before this page and after this page make clear 3 pertinent ideas. Okay, so if you read all of the stories in the back of the book and you reread the stories up to this page, you're going to find that these people came to find a God in their life differently. And God came to them differently, or they came to God differently. And so it happens different ways for different people. There's no definitive answer to that, but the only thing here that I'm talking about is what stories, when they say before and after, what are they talking about? They're talking about before this page and after this page. There's lots of stories. And if you read all the stories and you study all the stories, you'll come to your own conclusion, which may be different than mine and how that works. So I'm not saying you're wrong, but I'm not saying you're right either. Whatever works for you is perfect. But what works for you may not work for me. I have to find my path. Does that make sense to you? Kind of a little cop out of your of an answer, but okay. Joe? Joe? Okay.
For you. Do you suggest people read the entire book before you go back and start working the steps? And studying it like a textbook?
No. I suggest that people read the book or study the book and start working the steps as they do them. If they're having a problem with God, then they should stop and start reading stories. And they might come across a story to them that helps them come to believe or make a decision. Okay. So whatever works, again, the process is let's get busy doing the steps and let's work the steps. But the stories need to be read at some point. If you need to read them to help you do a step, fine. If you need to read them after the steps, fine.
Step 2 stories, you can read it at any time.
Yeah,
Start.
right. But some people that maybe get stuck on step 2, maybe read a story or two and see if that helps them. Okay. So then he says, to make clear 3 pertinent ideas. Now we have the ABCs of how it works. A, that we were alcoholics and could not manage our own lives. That's step one. B, that probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism. That is step two. C, that God could and would if he was sought. That is step two. A is step one, B and C are steps two. They are not like you go to a treatment center, they'll tell you that's 1, 2, and 3. No, that's not 1, 2, and 3. How do we know that? Look at the next sentence. Being convinced, we were at step 3. So that explains right there that A, B, and C is not step 3. If you're convinced on these 3 pertinent ideas, step 1 and step 2, then you're now at step 3. Interestingly, scoot over to page 63 for a minute. Second paragraph on page 63 says, we were now at step 3. Have you ever noticed that? That page 60 says to you, being convinced we were at step 3, and page 63 says we are now at step 3. Why is it telling us twice that we're at step 3? Alcoholics are hard-headed. Actually, that's a correct answer.
Says we were at step 3, and the second one says we were now at step 3.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're absolutely right. The first one says we were now at step 3. Doesn't mean you did anything. So, you're at step 3, but you ain't done shit yet. Yeah.
Now.
So, but it's interesting because most people hardly even notice that it tells us twice that we're at step 3 or now at step 3. So being convinced we were at step 3, which is that we decided to turn our will and our life over to God as we understood it. Just what do we mean by that, and just what do we do? Okay, and so there's a big question there, and the answer to that is right there. The first requirement is that we be convinced that any life run on self-will could hardly be a success. I want to stop there for a minute because of time, but so let's just go for a minute and let's just look at what step 3 is telling us. Made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. So I'm just going to focus on this for the rest of the meeting, and we'll get back to where we just left off in the book. So step 3 has got a few different parts to it. The first part is a decision. Okay? So it says we made a decision. And a decision implies further action. Okay? If you're talking about a decision, that means it implies that there's something else I have to do. It's not just, if there's no action followed with it, then it's not a decision, it's a resolution. What do you call it?
An idea.
No, yeah, it's an idea. The book says we made many resolutions, but never a decision, right? So that's all it is, just an idea. So the decision is the first part. Then to turn our will is our thinking. But it's our thinking on 3 dimensions. And this is important. It's our thinking past, present, and future. It's everything. What are we talking about? Our will. Yeah, it's our thinking on 3 dimensions. It's everything that I've always thought of, that I'm thinking of now, and that I hope to do. Everything that I thought about doing, everything I'm thinking about doing now, and everything that I will do. 3 dimensions: past, present, and future. And our lives is our action, also on 3 dimensions. It's everything I have done, am doing, and will do. So one is of the mind and the other is physical. Okay. And the word lives, plural, is not a mistake. And some people say, well, they put that there because he's talking about all of us. No, he could have said, turn our life over, and it would have meant the same thing. He used the word lives, Lives, to let you know that we have to look at what we're going to do in the fourth step. Is we're going to take a look at how we've thought, acted, and reacted in all kinds of given situations throughout our life. Right? And I have many facets of my life. I have a life of a father, friend, of a recovering person. I have a businessman. So I have different areas. My lives are different. Okay. And I want to look at how I've thought, acted, and reacted, the thinking and acting in all different parts of my lives. Okay. So made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care. Now that little 4-letter word is a dirty little 4-letter word, the care of God. The care, what that means is, and we talked about that, right? When I tell you, I bring my car did we do that here? To get fixed? Oh, I'm confused, man. I'm sorry. So the care means like, so I drive a Cadillac, right? If there's something the matter with my car, I don't take it to the Kia dealer. I take it to the Cadillac dealership, right? Because who better to fix my car than the maker, right? And so over here, when we're talking about our lives, who better to fix my life than my creator? So I take my issues to the care of God. Now, when I take my car to the Cadillac dealership, I don't give them my car. It's my car. I just turn it over to their care. And when I go to God, I don't give God my life. When God wants my life, hell no, I'll know about it. It'll be over. So what I do when I go to God is I go to him to the care of God. Same concept as bringing my car to the dealership. I bring my life to my maker and to the care of my maker. Okay. So what that really means, and this is the essence of the third step. If you can master this, your sobriety will soar, your spirituality will soar, you'll be on a whole different plateau. What this really means is that you're able to get out of the result business. When you can turn your will and your life, your thoughts and your actions over to the care of God, you are able to get out of the result business. You check your motives, you do the best you can in any situation, and the results of that are none of your damn business. And if you can get there, now I'm there a lot, but I can't stay there permanently. This shit comes in all the time. That's self-will that we're talking about. But I'm there more than I'm not there today. It's a good place to live. That you can get out of the result business. I check my motives. I do the best I can. The results are none of my business. Whatever happens, happens. I know that I checked my motives. I know I did the best I can. And whatever happens is God's will, not mine. I'm okay with that. Because we certainly don't always get our way, do we? Yeah. So, okay. So that's what that Lord means. And then the last thing says, God as we understood him. And notice that this is past tense. Understood. Doesn't say understand him. It's past tense. And again, it's not past tense by mistake. God as we understood him because the understanding of God took place in step 2, not in step 3. The understanding of God took the search for God. We went over that in the big book. Started in step 2. The spiritual growth started in step 2. And now I'm on step 3. And that's why they say understood. And if you ever want to know if you ever did a good third step, wait till you get to the 11th step. You'll find out. All right. That's it for this week then. I'm sorry I'm kind of jumbled up in my head what I just did and what I did do with you guys. I don't know. Hopefully I'll have it straight. Thank you.